Hey guys, welcome back to part 3. I'm Elizabeth, the curly-haired country gal. I'm finally getting caught up on beekeeping videos for my 4th year of natural beekeeping, 2024. It's been a good year. It's been a really helpful learning year. So in the first video I told you about how splits went with some issues. In my second video I was talking about catching some swarms and relocating some swarms and how that went. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the journey of buying some virgin queens to try and resolve some issues, as well as combining colonies. And I have one tidbit to share at the end that I feel like kind of summarizes everything I've learned this year so far. Let's do this thing. At the end of the last video, the colony count was at 20. Now we're at 18. In between, I think it was in between the first and second videos, I had sold 1 nuke. And in between the events of the last video and this video, I also sold 2 additional nukes. That's something that is another goal. I hope and I pray that beekeeping can be part of our family's income at some point. And so I would love to get more into making and selling nukes. So that was a great opportunity, and maybe down the road I can make a video about that experience. But the colony count is at 18. But at this point in the beekeeping journey, I had 4 colonies that had issues. The anniversary and camping hive, which I split a week after the rest of them, had laying workers. The mountain hive, I found out, also had an issue because I must have missed the queen, and there was no brood and no queen in that colony either. And then there was a 4th colony that also had some issues, and I'll get to that one. As I mentioned in the last video, there's a lot of different ideas and ways, methods that people have for dealing with a laying worker. So I went ahead and I moved a frame of brood, I think from the Freedom Hive and one from the Sun and Moon Hive, I think, to the anniversary and camping hives. After that point, I decided, you know, if that doesn't work, I'm not going to keep giving them frames of brood and giving them resources from another colony. I'll just do something else, whether it's nothing or something. So when I checked back, I was very excited to see that the anniversary hive did have some queen cells on that frame of brood that I've given them. So at this point, I'm going to check back in about a month and we'll see if they were able to make a new queen or not. Unfortunately, when I checked back into the camping hive, they hadn't really done much with the frame of brood that I had given them. There were no queen cells on it, so they were still in the same boat that they were in before. So with that colony, I decided to go ahead and just attempt my first combination. Now with combining colonies, there's different ways to do this as well. I've only tried one way so far. One way that I've heard of is to put the frames with the bees inside an existing colony with some newspaper in between them so that the bees have a chance to kind of exchange some smells and pheromones without actually being in contact with each other. And then when they eventually eat through the paper or the newspaper, the idea is that they'll be assimilated into each other's colony. That's not the approach I took this time. Another approach that somebody suggested, which I thought would be better because I knew I had a laying worker, was to go ahead and shake the bees off and dump them in front of a colony. So I actually did that in front of this school hive. You can't see it right now, but I put that corrugated plastic in front, there we go, in front of the entrance as kind of a ramp, and I went ahead and took the frames from the camping hive and I shook them out in front of, or on top of that ramp. The reason I didn't want to do the newspaper method is because somebody had mentioned that if you take a laying worker and just move her into a colony with a queen, there's a chance that she's gonna kill the queen, and I didn't want to risk that. So I dumped the colonies there. Then I went ahead and put the empty frames just next to it on this post over here. Now if I could do things differently, I would have put the leftover frames a little bit farther away because there was a lot of activity around here. There may have been a little bit of robbing that was starting to happen in the hive. The other thing I would have done differently was to perhaps reduce the entrance a little bit for the same reason, because there were just so many bees around. This was already kind of a weak colony. This was split from the Sun and Moon Hive earlier this year. It's a really strong colony, but this was just a really small colony. And so first of all, that was an important note that when you'd make a combination, you want to do a weak colony like the one you're going to combine from with another kind of weak colony. You don't really want to risk damaging a healthy colony. So anyway, this was already kind of a weak colony, so I think I should have reduced the entrance just to make it so that they didn't have so much to defend. But my biggest concern after that was that the laying worker may have still gone in and tried to kill the queen, maybe robbing happened, and was gonna further weaken this weak colony. But I did go ahead and check on them a few days ago and then today, and it's still a pretty small colony, but I did find the queen, so I was able to go ahead and mark her, and we'll get back to the marking thing in a second. So I wanted to practice marking queens this year. I wanted to do this for two main reasons. One, because now that I'm getting to where I have quite a few colonies, it just becomes so inefficient to spend 15-20 minutes looking for the queen if I do need to find her. I don't generally have to find her, but if she's marked, it's just going to make things so much faster. And the second reason is because I want to start selling more nukes, and so I want to keep track of the ages of the queens and give buyers marked queens so that they can keep track of how old the queens are as well. So I got a queen marking kit and I was ready to practice marking the queens. Unfortunately, my very first time trying to mark a queen was in the Sun and Moon Hive, and I injured the queen while I was trying to mark her. I got this kind of marking kit, and there's just these 2 cylinders with a padded plunger that goes into it, and the queen was on top of the frames, and I was too hasty. I was trying to move too quickly, and I put down that cylinder onto her, and I kind of crushed the back of her abdomen. She didn't die, but she was obviously very injured. That happened on June 5th. Now, as a side note, I've gotten way better at marking queens. I haven't killed any more as I've been marking them. But one big takeaway is if you're going to practice something like that, like marking queens, start with a weak colony, not your favorite colony. So right now I have 2 colonies that are going to need new queens. The Sun and Moon Hive and the Mountain Hive, which was the swarm that doesn't have a queen. So I went ahead and got in contact with Corey Stevens at Stevens Bee Company. He's also in Southeast Missouri and raises disease-resistant queens. I got one from him in the past and it ended up being successful and I was really happy with it. So I reached out to him. Now I was already going to go out there to purchase 1 queen, and I knew that I had 2 colonies with issues. So in the Sun and Moon Hive, I thought, well, they could requeen themselves, but I can give them a 2-week head start if I provide a queen for them. So I went ahead and got 2 queens from him. That was on June 16th, so that was 11 days after I injured the queen. She was still in the colony up for most of that time, and they didn't take her out before I got to the hive again. So I picked up the queens on Sunday the 16th. On Monday the 17th of June, I went ahead and introduced the queen, the virgin queen, into the Mountain Hive after making sure there were no queen cells. And I went ahead and took some sugar water and I sprayed it on the little capsule that she was in and the surrounding bees to kind of help them all start to clean each other off and be friends. So now with that colony, similar to the anniversary hive, I'm just waiting at this point to see if it was successful or not. I went ahead and checked on it today and there was no brood still, but it's still fairly early. So that was about 6 days ago, so not even a week. It still might be kind of early for her to be laying. I didn't see a queen or brood, so hopefully both of those show up soon. Oh, by the way, so you may remember from my last video, I was sharing a lot of the updates around the farm as well as news that we're expecting a baby. We were interested in adopting another cat that had wandered onto our property, and he was really scared of us at the time, but now he's not. So this is Milo. He is a sweet and handsome Siamese cat. He's a snugglebug. Hi, Milo. So I'm waiting to see how things are going to turn out with the Mountain Hive and the Anniversary Hive. Camping Hive is no more. That left the remaining issue with the Sun and Moon Hive. Now I know I injured the queen on the 5th. I think I left her in there for another week, kind of hoping that the bees would take care of her themselves. So I think she was in there until about the 12th, the next week. So at this point, it had already been 11 days since she got injured. I highly doubt, based on how flat I made her abdomen, that she was able to lay any eggs during that time, but I highly doubt it. Even if she was able to lay eggs, I removed her on Saturday the 15th. Then a few days later, I was able to check the colony again, and they had put up quite a few emergency queen cells. So on the one hand, I thought, well, that's great. They're doing their job of trying to make a new queen. But at that point, it had been so long that it wouldn't have been a viable queen anyway. So that takes us up to today, Sunday, June 23rd. And I went back through that colony again, and I knocked down at least 30 queen cells. I had also stuck the queen in there with a capped lid on. And so I was a little bummed because I thought, man, she's in there already. But I have heard that the virgin queen doesn't have the same pheromone that a mated queen would. So maybe they just weren't smelling her. And I had sprayed the sugar water on as well. So I knocked down all those queen cells. I looked through all the frames and made sure I got all of them down. I put her into the hive again, still with the cap on, because I didn't want her to get out too soon and for them to kill her. And I sprayed kind of the area with sugar water. So my big takeaway with that is that in the future, if I injure a queen like that, or I see that that happens early enough in the season like it is, I just need to go ahead and take the queen out right away and just let them requeen with the young brood that's already in there. Just let them do their thing. So my final hive count right now is 18. I hope it stays there, but there's the potential that I'm gonna get down to 15 because of errors. Oh, my chickens decided to be so feisty all of a sudden. So noisy. So overall, I think it's been a really good year still. There's definitely been some issues, but still a lot of good learning has happened. And the thing I'm most encouraged about is that most of the errors that came, I think, were not because bees are difficult and confusing and hard, but it was a beekeeper error. So that might not sound very encouraging, but to me it's encouraging that the more I can learn about how bees work and I can get in tune with that and let the bees just be bees and intervene less and try and do less, the easier things are and the more successful they are. So I hope that this has helped you. Leave a comment with something that you learned or how your beekeeping journey is going. And I'll try to keep you posted on how those issues resolve. Bye.